guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in this 2020 Audi A1 Sportback. This one uses a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, producing a dizzying 94 brake horsepower. No speeding tickets for me then. Let me give you a bit of background. The Audi A1 has been around since 2010, and here in Europe at least, it's become very popular. You see them all over the place. That's mainly due to the fact that although it's a small, cheap-to-run city car, it still feels well built. It still has that premium feel to it. More often than not, you buy a small city car because you want something that's cheap to run and easy to park. But that usually means you've got to put up with something with a very plasticky interior, a rubbish engine, and loads of road noise. But Audi have proved with the A1 that that doesn't have to be the case. The original Audi A1 ran from 2010 all the way until 2018, before making way for this all-new and improved Mark II. Apparently, according to Audi's CEO, when this second generation A1 ends its life cycle, there'll be no Mark III. Audi aren't planning to replace it. From then on, the cheapest Audi you'll be able to buy, and there are no prizes here for guessing correctly, will be a small crossover SUV. Such is the way things are going. No doubt it'll be powered by batteries too. I do genuinely worry for the future of the motor car because I think in 10 or 15 years' time, all brands will just have a choice of 3 electric-powered SUVs, small, medium and large. That seems to be the way the world's going. There'll be no quirky or interesting cars left. Styling-wise, I was never a big fan of the first generation A1. I thought it was a little bit too cutesy. It was the rich girl's Fiat 500, basically. It was a quick way of letting the world know that your beauty salon was doing okay, but not quite well enough for you to be able to afford a Range Rover Evoque. Whereas this second generation is much better. It's a bit more masculine, the lines are more angular and sharp. It's less fussy. The whole car just looks more modern. And although its actual footprint hasn't changed a great deal, it feels much bigger. If you were to debadge this, you'd think it was an A3. The original A1 was sold with either 3 or 5 doors, but this one isn't. It's sold only as a 5-door. Audi call it a Sportback, but that's just marketing nonsense. It's just a 5-door hatchback. This car actually shares its platform with the Mark VI Polo and the Mark V Ibiza, this one being the most expensive of the 3. Moving inside, the interior is modern and slick. You'll see an interesting use of materials, particularly around here near the infotainment screen. You'll also notice that they've carried over some of those sharp lines from the exterior and brought them inside too, such as here around the door handles. It all works very well. I also like the fact that you get a proper old-fashioned handbrake. That's something quite rare these days. There are a couple of areas of cheap plastics which honestly shouldn't have made the cut. Here on the top of the door, that's quite sharp and cheap feeling, and also here around the handbrake and the twin cup holders. But apart from those 2 areas, everything else feels well built. You get this large touchscreen infotainment system as standard, along with the digital gauge cluster. They just help it feel like it's fit for 2021. I love how this central screen totally blends into the rest of the dash. If you're not a fan of those bolt-on iPad-style infotainment systems that Mercedes use, I think you'll love this one. If you were to turn it off, you'd genuinely never know it was there. The DAB radio works very well and rarely loses its signal. And the lane departure assist isn't too annoying either. Some systems are too intrusive. It's like having a virtual hyacinth bouquet as a passenger. But this isn't. This just gently reminds you if you stray over the white line. All of the modern tech is what I've been most impressed with about this car. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. And for somebody like me who's not used to driving brand new cars, it makes you realise what you're missing. The quality of the display is very crisp, and it's also very responsive. The digital gauge cluster is very nice too. It's very clear and crisp. All of the information that you could possibly wish to know, and some more that you couldn't care less about, is displayed nicely. All of the buttons, and to be honest there aren't that many, but they're all laid out clearly. Everything's easy to find. I also like the button that you get here for the headlights. Rather than a traditional dial, or a dial on the stalk, you get this neat little button. I've never seen that before, but it makes more sense. Speaking of lights, the headlights are excellent. They're so bright. I flashed a pedestrian before to cross the road, and I think I might have burned his retinas. I also like the fact that the indicators are on some sort of relay so they chase themselves along. It almost reminds me of that old Snake game you'd get on Nokia's back in the day. One of the most important aspects of a small city car like this is interior space, and this new A1 scores well. There is plenty of interior space, even in the back. There's plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, plenty of elbow space. It doesn't feel like you're in a small car. The boot is also bigger than you could reasonably expect from a car of this size, at 335 litres. You can also fold the seats down flat, which creates a space of over 1,000 litres. The more time you spend with this car, the more you realise it's been designed very thoughtfully. It's very practical. It just feels like a quality product. It doesn't feel like the cheapest car in Audi's range. Being a German car, you don't get many extras thrown in for free. This car from new would have cost north of £20,000, and you don't even get parking sensors. You'd expect more from a premium brand. Although, as my grandmother would say, those who expecteth never receiveth. And to be fair, you don't receiveth an awful lot with the A1, unless you spend a lot of money on extras. Under the bonnet of this one is the 1 litre 3-cylinder petrol, which for absolutely no reason at all is badged as the 25. Can anybody explain Audi's new badging system? Because to me it makes absolutely no sense. Now when I see one on the street, I don't know what 25, 35, 40 means. They just seem like arbitrary numbers. After initially driving this one, I thought perhaps the 25 was in reference to its 0 to 60 time. It never feels quick. In fact, until the turbo kicks in at about 2,500 RPM, it feels decidedly flat. That just means that you have to drive everywhere with your foot mashed into the carpet, which then becomes quite good fun. So no, it never feels quick, but once you learn how to drive it, i.e., rev the nuts off it, it has enough pace, to be fair. It handles well too, Alright, it's not a proper driver's car, it's not, like a Mini or something, but it's quite fun to drive. More fun than you'd expect, anyway. The good thing is you can drive everywhere with your foot to the floor and still keep your licence clean. Happily, there are a few other engine options. There's a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol, or a 2 litre 200 horsepower option. Now that's the one I would go for. That comes with an automatic gearbox as standard. This one uses a 5-speed manual gearbox, which in fairness is pretty good fun to use. Though I would recommend if you do more motorway miles, then you're better off going for a 6-speed. It'll just keep the revs nice and low as you're doing 70 or 80 miles an hour. Weirdly, there are no diesel engine options available. The previous generation A1 you could buy with a 1.6 litre TDI, which was free to tax and extremely frugal. There was also a 2 litre TDI which was only 30 quid to tax, and that was genuinely good fun to drive. It provided way more power and torque than you could reasonably expect for such a small car. Sadly, they dropped the diesel engine option from the lineup of the new A1. Even weirder is the fact there's no EV option. You'd have thought they'd have jumped on that bandwagon, wouldn't you? Well, they didn't. Well, at least not yet, anyway. Something else that's quite disappointing is there's no S1 anymore. I always quite liked the original S1. I like the fact that they were quick, grippy, fun to drive, and quite rare because hardly anybody bought them. Fuel-wise, this little 1 litre will do around 48 miles per gallon around town, and around 60 miles per gallon on a motorway run. So they're quite cheap to run. But because they were all registered after 2017 when the new tax rules came into force, the road tax here in the UK will set you back £155 a year. That's just a standard fee across the board. Servicing and parts shouldn't cost you a lot either if you use an independent garage. I had this one serviced yesterday at an Audi main dealer because it's so new. It basically had a minor service, just an oil and filter change, and that set me back £238, which I think is an extortionate amount of money for a little 1 litre engine. It's probably 4 times the amount you'd expect to pay from an independent garage, but because this is still under its 3-year, 60,000 mile manufacturer warranty, I thought I had to get it serviced at a main dealer. That's the thing with main dealers, I'd always recommend you price up a service with them first because it looks better when you come to sell the car, the fact that you can say that it's got full main dealer service history rather than, loads of random garages. But the pricing just doesn't seem to make any sense. A couple of years ago I used the same Audi garage to service my TTS, and that only cost me £180. I've got a similar story with BMW. I had my 640 serviced at Williams in Stockport, and that only cost me £178 for a minor service. So a couple of weeks later I got a 520 diesel in stock, which had full BMW service history, and it was due a service, so I thought, well, I may as well take it back there. They quoted me something like £478 for just a minor service. Didn't make any sense at all. Anyway, back to the A1. It rides very well, it handles very well, it isn't too uncomfortable or firm. This road is particularly bumpy and it's not that bad. This one's just the Sport Technic model. Now imagine if you go for an S-Line with big wheels, then the ride does get worse. The steering's nice and light, it's easy to place, it's very easy to park, even without parking sensors. Visibility is very good, there are no obvious blind spots, and it comes with 2.5 cup holders, in case you were wondering. Used prices here in the UK start at around £16,000. Now that's one good thing about Audis, they do hold the value quite well. For £16,000 you're going to get an early high mileage example. All in all, the whole car just feels more grown up, more mature, more sensible. it would seriously make you think twice about spending more money on an A3. This will do exactly the same job for considerably less money. My choice would be the 2-litre auto, unless insurance and fuel are big issues for you, in which case there's nothing really wrong with the 1 litre. It's nice and quiet too. So quiet, in fact, when you're at traffic lights, you'll wonder whether it's switched off. You could buy something like the new 5-door Mini instead. This is nowhere near as cute or quirky or customisable as that, but I think that's part of the A1's appeal. This is less ridiculous, less juvenile. You could turn up for a meeting in a suit in a Manhattan grey Audi A1, but you couldn't do that in a 5-door Mini in a bright colour with silly stickers everywhere. You just look like a bit of an idiot. Thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave the link below. If you've got any comments or questions, let me know and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you're thinking of getting into the used car business, then do check out my online course. I'll leave the link below. I've created an online portal with nearly 100 videos explaining every single aspect of the motor trade. How to start, funding options, what to buy, where to buy, dealing with repairs, preparing your cars for sale. It's all there featured on the course, so do check it out. So yeah, cheers guys, I'll see you next time.